welcome back for episode number 138. We are back to my regularly scheduled content, no guest appearances, no one helping me to explain games. So I played a few games which I really loved in the last couple of weeks, so I will talk about those. And then I will mention again at the end of this video that I'm going on a little vacation with my family to southern Spain. So I'm going to be seeing the parts of Spain which had a lot of Arab influence, which I'm really excited about. So there might not be another video until April 7th because I am returning on April 5th, which is a Saturday. So if I'm feeling up to it, I might shoot a video on the 6th. Otherwise, you might not see a video until April 14th again, just to let you guys know. So let's just get into the games that I played. Let's talk about Quorum. This is a 2025 game for 2 to 4 players designed by Raul Franco Jimenez, Fran Martinez Rosa, and the art is done by Bia Tormo, and it's published by Devere Games. And this is a review copy which I kindly received from Devere Games. Now this is a hand management, end game bonuses, a set collection game. So in the center, you are going to have the city of Rome, and around Rome, you are going to randomly place different provinces, and underneath each province, you are going to have an influence token. The influence token will start at the number 2 for each province, but the lowest you can go is 1 and the highest you can go is 4. So again, you're going to randomly place provinces and an influence token at the number 2 under each province. And then let me just show you the provinces, and each province shows its scoring condition right on the tile, which is really nice. So you have Germania, you have Africa, you have Macedonia, you have Asia, Gallia, and then finally Hispania. So you're going to randomly place these around, and then each player is going to place one of their markers at the base of each province, because you're going to be keeping track of how much influence you have in each province. So basically, this is the Roman Empire that is conquering these different provinces. So at the start of the game, you're going to shuffle all of the province cards, and this is the back side of the card, and the back sides are different because they show you which provinces that card is going to influence, basically. So when you have cards in your hand, other players will see which province cards you have in your hand and which province you will be able to influence and move the your marker up in. So each player is going to be randomly dealt 4 cards, and then you are going to shuffle in the 14 God cards, which will create your deck, and then put 5 face up. So on your turn, what you're going to do is you're first going to take 1 card, and then you're going to play a card. So you can play a card that you just took, or you can play a card from your hand. And I will discuss how God cards play in a minute. So let's suppose this was the card that I ended up taking. So this would show that I am going to increase my marker by 3 spaces in Hispania, because this is Hispania. And as you can see on the back of the card, it shows Hispania. So I'm going to increase my personal marker in Hispania by 3 spaces. And then I'm going to place this in front of me. That is starting to form my tableau. And this happens to be an intrigue card because it shows a feather in the corner. So there are different types of cards. So let me discuss the different types of cards before we get too far into the game. Because that has to do a lot with scoring. So again, there are these influence cards, which we just talked about. There are military cards. Military cards will show you a helmet. So let me see if I can find one. There's an architecture card. Okay, here's a military card. So again, this will show you a helmet. And each card is going to show you its scoring power. So this has a scoring power of 1, and this is a military card, and this card also happens to be a Hispania card. So again, you have cards from all different provinces, and you're going to have the different types of cards within each province as well. So that was a military card. This is a trade card. So a trade card is going to show you a pottery symbol. It'll show you its scoring power and which province you will be moving your marker up in. Trading cards will give you different types of goods that you are trying to form sets of. So that is a trading card. This is an architecture card. So again, you're going to see the scoring power, the province that it's associated with, and this pillar shows you that it is an architecture card. And there are different types of There are different types of architecture cards, and you are going to want to get as many different kinds as you can possibly get if you are going for architecture cards, that is. So I already showed you an intrigue card, and I'll explain how intrigue cards work when we get to scoring, but that is an intrigue card. And I'm wondering if those are all the different types. I think those are all the different types. Yes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about scoring. Well, first let's talk about how the game plays, and then I'll get into scoring. But you're going to want to know how the cards score at the end, because that's going to influence how you play, of course. So again, you're going to take a card from the face-up row and then add it to your hand and then play one card in front of you. The card you play in front of you is going to determine how many spaces you will move your marker in that given province on the card you just played. So let's suppose I played this card. I'm going to move up 2 spaces in Galia because it shows me that this is associated with Galia, and then I will place this in front of me. And then it will be the next player's turn. You will refill the row and it would be the next player's turn. There are special god cards. There are 14 god cards, which after you deal 4 cards to each player at the beginning of the game, the 14 god cards are going to get shuffled into the deck, and sometimes you may have a god card appear. When a god card appears, you are going to keep it face down so that you can only see the back of it. So you will never see what's on the front. So as you are drawing cards to refill the row after a player has selected their card, if the next card is a god card, you leave it face down so that you cannot see what is on the other side. If there happen to be 3 god cards in the row at any one time, the player can choose to take all 5 of those cards, remove them, and put out 5 new cards, and then the 5 cards that were removed would get shuffled into the deck. So god cards, when you use them, you have to play them immediately. So if I selected a god card from the row, I would immediately have to play it. So this means you can decide on which province you want to move your marker up by 1 space. So you're going to choose any province and move your personal marker up by 1 space, and then you're going to move the markers, the influence for the adjacent provinces, either up by 1, down by 1, and so on. So the different cards will tell you in different amounts how many influence a province loses or gains based on the card that you played. So for example, this one would increase both adjacent influences of the provinces by 1. This one would increase 1, it would increase the one to the left and decrease the one to the right. This one, and so on. So, there's some that would decrease both. So when you play this, the province you choose to move your personal marker up by 1 is the province you're going to use to then determine which 2 are adjacent and how they are affected. And of course, this is going to affect people's scoring at the end of the game. So these god cards you might want to use closer to the end of the game, maybe. The thing about using god cards is it is going to reduce your hand size. After you immediately play the god card, you have to add it to your hand and then play a card from your hand. So it's effectively going to reduce your hand size from 4 to 3 cards. And then if you play another card, from 3 to 2 cards, because it's taking up one of the spaces in your hand, so you have fewer cards to choose from. But of course, you've curried the favor of the gods, and you might have helped yourself a lot. So that is the disadvantage to using a god card, but they can be quite beneficial. So let's talk about scoring, because that's really important and the meat and potatoes of the game. So after everyone has played 12 cards in front of them, you are going to go to scoring. First, you are going to score each province. So you decide which province you want to start with, and then you will score province by province. And again, each province tells you how they score. So for example, Africa, if you had your scoring marker at 1 or above, you are going to look at what the influence is for that province. Let's suppose it was at 3. And let's suppose we're playing a 4-player game. So the person who is highest up in Africa and with their influence marker, they are going to take the total value of this influence and take all of their cards that have a shield value, a scoring value of 1, add up the total number of cards that show a 1 shield, and multiply it by the value of the influence token underneath that province. So you are going to take 3 times the number of cards you have showing a 1, and that is your score if you are the person who had your score marker farthest along in Africa. The next player is going to subtract 1 from this, so they will take 2 times the number of cards that had a 1 shield on them, and that will be their score. And the third player will get a score of 1 times the number of cards that had a 1 shield on it, and that will be their score. And the last player in a 4-player game would get nothing, because 0 times anything is 0. So it is possible that you will not score in certain provinces depending on where your personal scoring marker is in that province. So that is how Africa scores. Germania, you're going to look at the number of intrigue cards you have. So points are earned by counting the intrigue cards in front of the player and multiplying that number by the value of the influence token for this province. So again, the person with the highest will get the full value of the influence token times the number of intrigue cards. The next player would get 1 less from this times the number of intrigue cards, and so on. So that is how Germania scores. But don't worry, you're also going to score your cards separately apart from the provinces. So there is a dual scoring system in this game. Hispania, you are going to take the number of points earned by counting the trade cards in front of you and multiplying that number by the value of the influence token for this province. So again, the person who's farthest along will get the full value of the influence token. The second player will get that value -1, and so on. So Hispania has to do with your trade cards. Gallia has to do with your military cards. So add up all your military cards and multiply it by the value of the influence token, the full value if you're the highest player, and so on. And then Asia will be for your level 2 scoring cards. So all your cards that show a number 2 in the shield, you will take those, the total number of cards showing a number 2 times the value of the influence token. And again, the number 1 player would get the most. And then finally, Macedonia, you would do the same, but with architecture cards. So that is how the different provinces score. After you score the provinces, then you're going to score the cards. So it might be that you didn't score in a certain province, but you know, that doesn't mean you're completely out of luck, because now you're going to score the different card types. So military cards. So you are going to, for each pair of military cards with consecutive power values, grants you 5 points. So let's suppose, let me find some military cards to show you how that works. So here are 2 military cards with consecutive power values, 2 and 3. So this would give you 5 points. But let's suppose you have military cards with 3 consecutive values. So 1, 2, and 3. That would give you 10 points. So if you have 3 consecutive values, you'll get 10 points. If you have 2 consecutive values, you will get 5 points. But you cannot count them for 2 separate groups. So yeah. And then let's see, so that's how that scores. If you have military cards that are not consecutive, so for example, if you had a 1 and a 3, that would not give you anything if that's all you had. So that's how military cards score. Trade cards, so trade cards have different symbols on them, and you want to try to collect sets of them. So for 2 products of the same kind, you will get 2 points. For 3 products of the same kind, you will get 4 points. And for 4 or more products of the same kind, you would get 6 points. So that's how these trade cards score. Architecture cards. So there are different types of architecture cards in the game showing different types of buildings that were built in ancient Rome, which is really awesome. So here are a couple of examples. So you have, I think that's the Colosseum. I'm not sure what that is. It looks like a beautiful pool. So for architecture, for each different type, you will score points. So if you have 1 card, you will score 1 point. If you have 2 different types of architecture, you will score 4 points. 3 different types, 8 points. 4 different types, 12 points. 5 different types, 18 points. In 6 different types, 24 points, which is the maximum you can get because there are 6 different types of architecture in this game. And then finally, intrigue. You will count the power 3 cards you have and multiply that by the number of intrigue cards in front of you. So again, these are intrigue cards. and we just saw a power level 3 card. So you will take all of your power level 3 cards, and it doesn't matter if they're trade, architecture, or what, and you will take the total number of intrigue cards and multiply that by the number of your power 3 cards, and that is your points for intrigue cards. And then whoever has the most points will win. And that is the game. So it says, let me see in the case of a tie what you do. So it says, if there is a tie, the one who has the most influence in all the provinces combined wins. If there is still a tie, then the tied players govern Rome in a coalition. So that is the game. So it's a really fun game because as you're playing, and you only have 12 turns, so you got to make those 12 turns really count. But as you're playing, you're mindful of how each province is going to score, but also how your personal cards are going to score. So you're kind of keeping track of both, but you might want to, focus more heavily on something if you think you can score better in one way and maybe not pay as much attention to the provinces and how they're going to score if you're doing really well with your cards, and these cards are really interesting because, when you play a card, it's going to increase your power in a certain area. So your marker is going to go up in a certain area, but, the next time you have a card with that area, it might be a different type of card and not like an intrigue card, for example, because all these different provinces have all the different types of cards associated with them. So it just makes the game really variable and really, really interesting and just a lot of fun. Like, it's a lot of fun. So as the cards are coming out in the display, you might see a card that you really need, and then the player before you ends up taking it and stuff like that. So I just had a lot of fun playing this game. I thought it was just really, one of those games that you can have multiple paths to victory and different players are just trying different strategies. And I can see this being very replayable as you try out different strategies and see what you want to focus on. Like, do you want to focus on province scoring and try to use gods in order to affect the influence marker and how much different provinces are going to be worth? If you're really far ahead in a province, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more points. It just means you're going to get the highest value from that. So at the same time, as you're trying to increase your value in different provinces, you don't, necessarily need to gain so many points in one province unless, that province value has a influence token at 4 and you want to be sure that you get the first place for that province value. But then you also need to be sure that you have the actual stuff that's going to score when you get, when it comes to card scoring at the end, and when it comes to actually scoring that province. So if you are farthest ahead in one province that scores, for example, shield 2 cards, but you only have one shield 2 card, maybe not worth it. So there's a lot of stuff to keep track of in this game as you're playing, and it's a lot of fun, and you will be revising your strategy as you go along. I just really, really enjoy this game. The dual scoring system is really clever. I don't think I've seen that in another game. It's, a very easy to learn game and kind of quick. I mean, not super quick, but it's a good medium game, and I would recommend it for game nights for sure. I think that this is a game that you could see yourself pulling out again and again at game night and playing it again and again and trying different strategies. I really enjoyed it, and I think that this is one you should definitely keep your eyes out for. And again, another winner from DeVere Games. Do they ever miss? I don't think so. So yeah, so that was Quorum from DeVere Games. So yeah, so check it out. All right, let's move on. Another game I played recently is Moirai, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully. So this is a 2025 game for 2 to 4 players designed by Alberto Milan, and the art is done by Loles Romero, and it's published by DeVere Games. And this is a review copy, which I received from DeVere. I absolutely loved the artwork of this game, and the concept just sounded interesting. The theme, it's a theme that I had never heard of before in a board game, but basically you have the 3 fates who are basically threading lives together, and the 3 fates will determine how the lives that you as the player thread will score. So just a really interesting concept that I had never heard of before in a board game. So you have the different fates. So let me just tell you about the different fates. And I'm probably going to butcher their names, but I'll try my best. So you have Cloto. So this is Cloto, and these are the scoring cards for her. So you will choose, you'll shuffle these and then randomly select one of her scoring cards, which will be effective for the game you play. This one, what's her name? Let's see. This is Lachesis. And again, I'm probably butchering their names. So again, you will shuffle these and then randomly select one of her scoring cards. And then you have Atropos. And what's interesting is that these different fates represent the different parts of your life, like the beginning, the middle, and the end of your life. And the scoring conditions, the way that these cards score kind of reflects that as well. So like, for example, when you're scoring Atropo and Lachesis, sorry, no, is Lachesis the end? No, Atropo's the end? No, Lachesis. So when you're scoring Cloto and Lachesis, the beginning and the middle, you are going to score threads that are not completed. But in order to score Atropos, which she's responsible for the ends of lives, you have to have completed your lives in order to score for Atropos. So basically everyone is going to start with one card, face down, which represents the start of a life. So this is the back of a card, and on the other side you're going to see different colors and the different threads and different numbers, of course. So the cards, I believe, are numbered from 0 through, is it 99? I cannot remember what the number is. It's like 89 or 99, something like that. I think it actually says here somewhere. 79, sorry. So there's 80 cards in this deck because they're numbered from 0 to 79. So there's 80 cards. So you are going to, on your turn, so each person again starts with one starting thread. And on your turn, what you can do is you will either draw 3 cards from the deck and choose one of them to place down in front of you, or you will select one entire discard pile. So you're not going to be able to select a discard pile if you're the first player, because there is not going to be a discard pile for you to choose from. So when you place cards, a card is played so if a card is played face up, you must place it in ascending order on the thread of any life that is open. So a life is open if you haven't closed it yet. So for example, this is the start of a life, so you could place this like this, and this life is still open because you haven't closed it yet. When you close a life, you would basically do this, and that means that life is closed and you cannot add any more numbers to that life. So each card, in order to start a life, has to be played like this. So if you wanted to start a new life, you could take a card and simply place it face down like that, and now you've started a new life. And this would be the first numbered card of this life. So when you play a card, face up, it must be placed in ascending order on the thread of any life that is open. If you play it face down, it can be used to open a new thread of life, or you can close a life that you have, created. So you'll be cutting a life. That's called cutting a life. So basically that's what you're doing. Now, if you take a whole discard pile, so the cards you don't choose, if you select 3 cards on your turn, you will keep one of them and you decide how to play it. And then the cards you don't select will be placed into discard piles according to their color. So all the blues will be placed together, all the greens will be placed together, all the pinks will be placed together, and so on. And then the reds will be placed together. So cards would be placed according to their color. And then if it's your turn, instead of selecting 3 cards and keeping one, you can take an entire discard pile and use those cards as you wish. So you can add all of them to lives, you can use one of them to start a new life, you can use one of them to cut a life and close a life, so on. So taking a discard pile can be very helpful because that will give you more cards to use. So that's what you can do on your turn. You can either draw 3 cards, keep one, discard the other 2, or you can take an entire discard pile to use. And again, you can play cards face up by adding them in ascending order, or you can create new lives or cut lives. Then at the end of the game. So the game ends when a player draws the last card from the life deck. And then as soon as they finish their turn, the game ends. If there are less than 3 cards left, they draw them all and play 1 card as usual. Then the game is immediately over. Then you will go to scoring. So you will score based on the different types of fates that we talked about. So it says each Moira has 4 scoring cards. So let's see. And they show the different goals set for, set by each Moira and how they are scored. So it says only the objectives or atropos are linked to the conclusion of lives. So only the lives that are not ended are considered for the scoring of the objectives set by Clotho and Lachesis. So Clotho's scoring objectives all have to do with how lives are created and started. So for example, let me show you an example of a Clotho card. So this one. So this one says, you get 4 points for having the most of a color at the start of your lives. So let's suppose you have like 5 different lives and 3 of those lives start with red, and that's more than any other player has of lives starting with red, then you would get 4 points for red. You could end up getting points for blue as well if you have the most lives starting with blue. So again, Clotho has to do with the beginning of lives. So all of her scoring cards will have to do with how lives are created and started. Then you have Lachesis, who has to do with the middle of lives. So the whole thread part. So for example, let me show you one. So this one says you get 3 points for each life that contains all 4 colors. So again, this has to do with the entire life, like the middle part. So again, you cannot have the life ended in order to score for these first 2 ones. But the last one, Atropos, you do have to close them in order to score. So any lives which are not cut, not closed, will not score for Atropos. So here's an example of one that scores for Atropos. So this one says, you will get 2 points for each cut life that has an ending value of greater than or equal to 40. So you will look at the last card that is in that life, and if it has a value equal to or greater than 40, you will score 2 points for that life. So you're going to look at all of your lives that you cut, that is ended, and look at the last value, and then you would be able to score for Atropos. And then whoever has the most points would win. So yeah, it's just a unique theme. It's a nice little filler game. So if you're looking for just a little unique filler game, this is one I can recommend. It just plays quickly. It's got different scoring conditions. Of course, there's some luck base to it, and of course, it can get a little bit frustrating if you are never getting discard piles. So if you're the one who keeps on, drawing 3 cards and adding cards to discard piles, then the other player might take the discard pile. So, in the game I played, I was like not getting any discard piles, which was a little bit frustrating, and I performed very badly, but I just really, really loved the artwork, and I think the theme is pretty cool. So yeah, so it's just a nice little filler game. It's not like anything super strategic, obviously, because, there is some luck involved. But if you're looking for a fun little unique filler game with really cool artwork based on Greek mythology, then this is one that I would check out. So yeah, so that was Moirai. So let's move on. Let's talk about Wild Gardens. This is a 2024 game for 1 to 4 players, designed by Isaac Vega, and the art is done by Alyssa Menold, and it's published by Rose Gauntlet Games. And this is a review copy which I received from Rose Gauntlet at the last PAX Unplugged in December. So thank you for them for this to them for this review copy, because I really enjoyed this game. So this has quite a bit of stuff going on in it, but it's got like track movement, and you're moving around this garden, you're collecting different kinds of ingredients, you're fulfilling recipe cards, you're improving your actions, you have action points and stuff like that. So quite a bit of stuff going on with a number of different boards. So let me just show you some of the boards. So here you have like a library board, and I'll be throwing up a picture, and there's going to be these like different kinds of tokens that you'll be able to acquire and add to your own player board in these sections in order to improve your actions. And there's also going to be book tokens around this board, and I'll explain what the book tokens are for and how that works. But look at this adorable little kitty. I just absolutely love that. This is the score tracker, and you're going to have two different scoring markers. You're going to have a jar and you're going to have a flower token. So jars will only move from jar to jar. So if you are increasing your jar points, you would go from here to here. You're not just going to put your jar where there is not a jar. And then, of course, you have the main board, and there are two different sides to this board. So you have like this really beautiful, like autumn looking board. I think that this is autumn. And this one seems a little bit more advanced than the other board because this one has like different pathways that you can go on as opposed to the other one, like more different options for you to choose instead of just kind of going around in a round circle. Like for example, you can even go off the board and then come back onto the board with this side of the board. You cannot do that on the more basic side of the board, which is this side. And there's two parts to this game. So there's the first part and then the second part. So I don't know if you're supposed to do this, but what we did is we actually switched over to the other side for the second part. So we started on this side and then we switched over, which I don't think you're supposed to do, but we did. And I just like, you know, carefully removed the player's pawns. And then when we flipped it over, we just put the player's pawns just in the section that they were directly next to when we flipped over the board, just because I wanted to try both sides. So I played one game using both sides of the board, which again, I think you're not supposed to do that. And then of course you have your individual player boards. So this is a player board. So here's the player board, and each person will have like essentially the same board. Like all your boards are the same. Like it shows you the different actions are going to be the same, like collecting ingredients, fulfilling recipe cards, and feeding people, and then, you know, you're doing your library, like research action, and so on. So each person's board essentially looks the same. And here it shows you that you have a maximum book section. You can only have 2 books checked out at one time, and so on. So how does this game play? So first let me just show you some player tokens. There is purple color, which is usually what I play as, and I did play as purple when I played this game, but I kind of wish I'd played as blue because the blue has a samoyed, which if you have been watching my channel for a long time, you know the samoyed is like one of my favorite types of dogs. My other favorite type of dog is a husky, and I really love Pomskis, which are Pomeranian husky mixes. But of course, you know, these are all breed dogs. These are not dogs you'll be able to rescue from a shelter. And of course, I advocate rescuing animals from shelters. So chances are I'll never have my dream dog. So, but anyway, I don't think I could have a dog. I just don't have the time for a dog, to be honest. So setup, you're just going to have a layout, and I'll be posting pictures of different cards. So you'll have different recipe cards laid out, and you will have different player cards laid out. So let me just show you some of the cards. Well, actually, I forgot to show you one other board. There's one other board which is going to have an event card on it, and on the back of the event card there's going to be, so you'll have a stack of these cards. And again, you only use 2 of these per game. So you'll have one card that looks like this on one side, and then on the other side, you will have the event that happens for that part, half of the game. So, which is going to happen at the start of each day in player order. So I'll talk about how that works in a minute. But let me just show you some of the different types of cards that you can collect. So here are some different recipes that you are trying to make. So these are the recipes you are trying to cook, and it tells you what you need in order to make these recipes. So for example, this drink looks really good. You need 3 strawberries and 1 flower. And then of course it tells you the points that you'll gain from it once you make that recipe. This one, again, 3 strawberries, and it looks like a lettuce. Some of them are more difficult and will be worth more points. And then for each recipe card, you're going to see the type of recipe it is. So like, for example, I guess this is like a baked good, so it shows like a croissant in the corner. This is like a dessert, so it shows like a pie piece and so on. So there's different types of recipes which you're also going to want to pay attention to. So you're going to be fulfilling recipe types, and then you're also going to be trying to deliver them to different people in order to gain these cards, which will give you special abilities throughout the game. So for example, in order to activate this person, he requires one green type recipe and a wild, any other type of recipe. Sorry, they, it's not a he. So yeah, so they would require those types of recipes in order for you to then be able to use this card. So you're serving different people different recipes. And again, I'll talk about how that works. And some of them, when you serve them, you know, will give you points right away, but some of them, when you serve them, you will keep them for the duration of the game, and you'll score end game points like this guy, Pierce. So this guy, if you serve him those two different types of recipe cards, you're going to keep him at the end of the game because he's going to give you end game points. So you're going to have a row of recipe cards that you're trying to fulfill, as well as these different people who you are trying to serve. So let me just show you the different action markers, which I had started to do before I got distracted. So you have your player pawn, which is moving around the garden board. You have your regular score marker, which will be on the flower spaces. And then you have your jar, which will go along the jar spaces. And all of them have pretty artwork on them. And then you have your action pieces here. So each person has 5 of these. You have one that has the number 1 on it, one that has the number 2, and then 3 and 4, and then a wild, which can be used as a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So on your turn, you are going to place one of your action markers above the action space that you want to take. I guess I should use the blue board since I'm using the blue pieces. So suppose for my first turn, I want to gather ingredients. So I can place my number 4 here if I want to, and there goes the piece, which I will have to get later. So if I put my number 4 piece here, that means not that I'm collecting 4 ingredients, it means I'm moving 4 spaces around the garden. So these numbers indicate how many spaces around the garden you are going to move. So, and when you're moving spaces, you have to go in the direction of the arrows. And if there is another gardener somewhere, you have to jump over them. They do not count as one of the spaces. So as the game is going on, it's going to be, you know, trickier for you to get the different types of ingredients, because at the start of the game, you're going to randomly place ingredient types on these circles. So this game comes with really pretty bags, by the way. So let me just find the bag with the different ingredient types to show you. So yeah, so here is the bag with all the different ingredients, and you're going to randomly place them around that board in the various circles. So where you land, you know, it's random which ingredients you're going to get based on how those were randomly placed at the start of the game. And each section may I think is adjacent to 3 different ingredient types. So you can mix and match. So when you take the first action, which is select ingredients, you get to take 2 ingredients. So you could take 2 of the same kind, or you could take 1 of one kind and 1 of another. And then if that was the action you took and you happen to get a bonus action down here, which I'll explain how you do that in a little bit, you would also get to activate those. You get to activate your bonus actions once per turn. So if you took this action, it's not once per round, once per turn. You could also do your bonus actions if you have them. So that is collect ingredients. So again, the action marker you used will determine how many spaces in the garden you are moving. If you go in this area, you can either finish a recipe or serve a recipe. So in order to do this, you are going to place one of your action markers, move that many spaces. Now, in order to do the recipes, you have to land on a space with a picnic table. So in order to complete a recipe card or serve a recipe card, you have to be on a space with a picnic table, or else you cannot do that action. So once you land on a space with a picnic table, so again, you're going to have to jump over other people, take that into consideration. So, you know, you might not even be able to complete recipe cards at the time that you really want to, depending on which tokens you have in hand and where people are situated on the garden pathway. So, but if you do happen to land on a space with a picnic table and you can fulfill a recipe card, you're going to turn in the recipes that you have in under your ingredients. Sorry, you're going to turn in the ingredients you have under your ingredients section on your board, and then select the recipe card that you are completing and add it under collected recipes. So that is, completing a recipe card. Or you can serve someone. So if you have collected recipes here and you see someone in the row that you want to serve and get their special ability, you can discard your recipe cards in order to serve someone, and then you would add them to the side of your board to show that you have served these people. So that is what how you serve people or fulfill recipes. You have to land on a picnic table in order to do that. And again, some of these people will give you an ability that you can use at some point during the game where you can discard them. So when you serve someone, you gain the points for them immediately because otherwise it would be hard to keep track. So Mr. Mendez, for example, it says discard 2. So discard up to 3 of your reserved cards. For each card discarded, gain 2 points. So if you served Mr. Mendez, he only requires 1 card. He would immediately get 3 points. And then at some point during the game, you can discard him in order to discard any reserved cards you have and gain up to 2 points for each discarded reserved card that you have, up to 3 cards. So that is how that works. And then let's go to the last section. If you placed a token here to indicate you want to do this action, this is the library action. So the library action, you are going to look at the library board. So first you have to move your pawn again around the board, and then you have to see which book types which ingredients you are next to on the board, because which ingredients you are next to on the board determines which special token you might be able to get. So there are these really cool book tokens. So let me just show you the book tokens. Where is that bag? That's weird. Oh, here they are. So here are the book tokens. I'll just actually leave them in the bag so you can see them. So you can see the different book tokens have different ingredient types on them. So if your pawn is adjacent to an ingredient type and you see that there is still that book type on the library, you can take that book, which represents the ingredient you are adjacent to, add it to your borrowed books, and then take the special token that is next to that book and add it below one of your action types. So the next time you take that action, you will get that bonus action. So let me just show you some of the different types of bonus actions you might be able to do. So for example, this one, this would simply give you an extra ingredient. It looks like cinnamon or bark or something. This one, I'm not sure what that one is. This one looks like for every time you are next to a mushroom, you will gain 1 point, and so on. So there's just different types of these special things that you can add to the bottom of your board. Some of them, I believe, even give you points, like this one. This one will give you 3 points. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it says in the rule book. So all of these are explained in the rule book. So you would select one of these that is next to the book type that you are able to borrow. So let's suppose there were these 2 books and you just happen to be next to both of these ingredients, then you could take the token that's over here. Sometimes as books start disappearing, it's going to be harder and harder to collect these. How can you get more of these if you have space for only 2 books? So you will see that one of your free skills is to pay a matching ingredient to return a book. So in order to return a book to this board, you have to pay the ingredient type that is on that book in order to return it. So essentially that is all the books are for. They're for you to borrow in order to get these special skills that you can add to your player board. But in order to get rid of the books, you have to pay an ingredient and add the book back to this board. But by returning books, you will be able to add more and more special skills to your actions and upgrade your actions that way. But as the books start to get borrowed, it's going to be harder and harder for you to get these special skills. But the special skills will be replenished as soon as someone takes one. So if someone takes one, a new one will immediately come out. And some of them will get harder to take because if one book is already missing, then you're left with only one ingredient type to try to get this special skill type. So it's going to be harder as people start borrowing more and more books. So you're going to hope that people return books so that you can get your ingredient types. If they don't return books, all the books automatically get returned after the first half of the game. Another free skill that you can use at any time is to pay 3 matching ingredients to gain 1 ingredient of your choice. So another action you can do in this section is to reserve a card. So when you reserve a card, you're essentially kind of wasting a turn. So by reserving a card, you're also automatically going to get 2 points. So when you reserve a card, you can reserve either an ingredient type card or a person type card and add it immediately underneath your board under reserved cards. And you can't move it to the appropriate section until you obviously cook that recipe or serve that person. But you can reserve people and you can reserve recipes. If you really see a card that you really want, you might be willing to waste a turn in order to do that. So those are the different types of actions you are going to take. So you're going to go around until everyone has used all 5 of their action tokens, and you're going to be using all 5, I think it's 5 action tokens, even in the first round of the game. And then what you're going to do after everyone has done that, you're going to take one of those action tokens and place it onto this board. So let's talk about that. Okay, so yeah, so once the day is over, each player so you pass the first player marker to the next player, then you remove all action tokens from player boards to be used the next day. And then first we do the rest action. So the location. So you will, let's see, oh yes, after you've placed all your action tokens, on your next turn you must take a rest action by choosing an action token on your player board and placing it on the current day of the location board. This token cannot be used for the rest of the current trip. So the game takes part in 2 trips. So the number on the action token determines which bonus effect you will receive. So for example, again, those cards that I showed you, that's going to determine which bonus effect you will receive. So let's suppose this is the card that is showing for trip 1. If you decide to rest with your 1 action token, you will get to draw to take 2 ingredients based on where your pawn is on the board. If you take this one, you would get to do this action if you use your number 4 to rest. But just keep in mind that whatever token you use to rest, you're not going to have for the next round in the game. So now if you used your 4, you're not going to have your 4 action token in the next day to use. So that's something to keep in mind. So after you do that, that's when you pass the first player marker, remove all action tokens except for the ones on the location board, carry out at the beginning of each day in player order effects. And again, there's going to be a card which shows you where you all are. So you're going to carry that out as well at the beginning of each day in player order. You can do something. So for example, this one is in Rochester, Minnesota. So if in trip 1 for the first half of the game, you were in Rochester, Minnesota, this one says forage twice or cook. You do not need to be in a picnic zone in order to cook. So everyone in player order will get to do the location effect, like at the beginning of the day effect. And then the new day begins, starting with the new first player. So yeah, so as the game progresses, you're going to have fewer and fewer action tokens to use because they're going to end up going onto this board. So by the end of the first trip, you will have, I think, by the end of the second trip, you will have only 3 tokens because you start with 5 action tokens, but by the end of the second trip, you're only going to have 3 tokens because 2 will be on this board. So for the last day of the trip, you're only going to have 3 action tokens to use. So as the trip progresses, you're going to have fewer actions that you will be doing. And then at the end of the trip, you're basically just going to set up for the next trip. So you will end up getting a new location card showing you a new, at the beginning of the round, thing that you'll be doing. So for example, Bloomington, Indiana. I actually lived in Bloomington for 3 years and absolutely loved it. That's really cool. So now you might be in Bloomington, Indiana, and then you're also going to have a new card for your end of day location bonuses that you're going to be doing. So yeah, so that is essentially the game. Now let's talk about jars, because I did not speak about jars. So some of these cards are going to show you jars on them. So let me just find some people who have jars on them. So here is someone with, here are these twins, and they have a jar icon. And everyone starts with a jar icon on their player board as well. If you see an action that allows you to advance your jar, you're going to count up the total number of jars that you have in your player area. That does not include reserved cards. So if you served a certain number of people and you have, for example, 2 player cards, people cards that show 2 jars on them, plus you have a jar on your board that you start with, then when you get to take the jar action, you would advance your jar 3 spaces on this board. And advancing the jars is really good because that's a way to get a lot of points quickly. So there's some comboing you can kind of do in this game, which I managed to do, not a whole lot, but like, I guess comboing isn't the right word. You just need to time your actions appropriately so that you can hopefully get a lot of jar movements. So I guess it's not really comboing, but anyway, so let's go to end game scoring. So after the second trip, which plays just like the first trip, so you're going to have 3 days, and then you will do your, scoring at the end. So at the end of the trip, let's talk about scoring, final scoring. So at the end of the second trip, so add together the victory points from the position of your pollinator token, which is your regular score marker, and your jar token on the victory point track. Then add in any victory points from at game end abilities on guests that you served. Do not gain victory points for abilities on reserved guests who you did not end up serving. Add 1 victory point for every 4 ingredient tokens in your play area. And then the player with the most victory points is the winner. So yeah, it's a really fun game in which you have to carefully plan your actions and, just try to complete recipe cards and serve guests, but you're also mindful of where other players are on the board, because that can really screw you over. Like if someone is in a picnic area and you really need to cook something, you can be really screwed over, by not being able to cook a recipe then, and then you have to do something else. And then by the time it's your turn again, someone else might be in another picnic area, so you can keep on getting screwed over that way. But there are like different kinds of bonus actions and bonus tokens that will help you along the way. But it's a super fun game. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And yeah, so if you enjoy games with like track movement, but also recipe fulfillment and just, different kinds of fun actions that you can do, I think that you would really enjoy this game. Like it's a very pleasant game with just really pleasant artwork. It was just a very pleasant experience. Well, not super pleasant when people screw you over, but otherwise a pleasant experience. So yeah, so I really, really enjoyed this game. And again, I don't think you're supposed to flip over the board between trips, but we did just because I wanted to play with both sides. So of course this board gives you more options in terms of where you can move. So it's a more advanced board, but it can also be a little bit more problematic because I feel like it's easier to get to picnic spots on this side of the board, whereas on this side of the board, it can be a little bit more difficult, even though you might have more options on where you can move because you can go off the board and then re-enter the board in certain areas. Like, so for example, if you go off of the board with this 1 over here, this red ribbon, then you can re-enter over here, or you can choose to like go off of the board with this yellow 2 over here and re-enter here, but you can also go off of the board over here with the yellow 2 and then re-enter over here. So there's different ways to go off of the board and then re-enter the board, so which can be helpful. Oh, and you can also go here, go off of the board here with the 1. So there's 2 ways to go off of the board for each number, but 1 way to come back for each number. So yeah, from what I can see. But yeah, this board is just so pretty. Both sides are just so pretty. So I think one is fall and one looks like spring and summer. But oh, this game is just so beautiful. I just really, really enjoyed my play of it, and I really can't wait to play this again. Oh, and there's 2 sides to the board here as well, which I did not notice until just now. How did I not notice that? yeah, so you have this side and then this pretty purple side. So yeah, so just a really pretty game, and I believe that there's going to be an expansion coming out soon if it hasn't come out already. I remember when I got my review copy, the person who was giving me the review copy said if I could hold off on creating content until February, that might be a good idea because then there's going to be an expansion coming out. I don't recall seeing one on Kickstarter, so I don't know if it's happened yet or not. Maybe it got delayed a little bit, but I would be really curious to see what the expansion adds because I really enjoyed my play of this. So yeah, so this is one that I think will be staying in the collection for sure. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you should check it out. So that was Wild Gardens. So let's move on. Another game which I played recently, which I do not own, is Hutan, Life in the Rainforest, which is a 2025 game for 1 to 4 players, designed by Oscar Harding Garanurud, maybe probably butchered that, and Daniel Skjold Peterson, and the art is done by Vincent Dutrait, and yeah, and it's published by Sidekick Games, I guess. So this is a really interesting tile placement game with animals that you're also trying to collect by having the right flower types in your forest. And I'm not going to go into great detail because it turns out that me and another player, so we kind of accidentally cheated. Well, I cheated a lot, and then someone cheated a little less than me, and then another player cheated a little less than that player, and so on. So when it came to end game scoring, we were all listed as the biggest cheater, then the second biggest cheater, and so on the score sheet, because we were taught this game at Millennium Games for their Play Something New event, and some things were not explained very clearly, or maybe they were, but we just all misunderstood it. So yeah, so not counting this as an official play, I ended up winning because I was the biggest cheater, I guess, in the end, unintentionally. So not going to go into great detail, but this is one that I would definitely want to play again if I can ever get the chance. You know, if I didn't already have a billion games, maybe I'd even add it to my collection, just because it's a very strategic kind of tile placement game, and you're like collecting different flower types, you're trying to grow different trees and then attract animals to your different parts of the forest, and then the animals will fertilize the adjacent sections, and then you'll be able to grow more flower types. But getting the flower types onto your board is like the difficult part, which is where we ended up cheating a lot. Well, me specifically. So I'm not going to go into how it plays in great detail. I think that this is basically all I'll mention about it, but it does have a really good rating on BGG, and I can see why. So again, I hope I'll get the chance to play it again. I have quite a bit of store credit saved up, so maybe I'll even purchase it from Millennium Games, because again, I'd like to try this again. And it's got different difficulty modes. So we were playing at the difficult mode. We were playing the difficult mode of the game with cheating involved. So I think I'd like to try it at the basic mode without any cheating, and then the difficult mode without any cheating, and then see how I do. So yeah, so that is Hutan, a very not like good explanation of the game, but at least you get to see a pretty picture. And of course I won because I cheated the most. Okay, so that was Hutan. And then I played another game of Sagrada. And then I played this party game, which I was not a huge fan of, but I won, called Ransom Words. It's like, it's a game with these like little magnets with words on them, and you get a prompt, and then everyone has to create like a sentence or a clause of some kind, answering the prompt, and then you have a judge who decides whose answer is the best, and so on. So it's just a party game with like those magnets, and you're just adding magnets to your like little magnetic board and creating prompts and creating phrases and sentences and stuff like that, which can be fun. So yeah, but it's, you know, it's like very like Cards Against Humanity-esque, which is typically not my type of game. So not one that I would want to play again willingly. Like if, yeah. So anyway, so we were just playing that to kill some time. So that's why we ended up playing that, because we had time to kill. So yeah, so those were the games that I played in the last week. So let's move on. So let's go to new arrivals and games that I'm backing, and one of my Kickstarters arrived, which I'm really excited about, and that is Apothebakery. Like super excited. So this box has some UV spot on it, which is nice. I think that's what it's called, if I remember correctly. So let me just show you the different components. So there are different types of ingredient bags. Each player's board is, what do you call it? Dual layered, is that right? So yeah, so, you know, the pieces will not hopefully fall out, which is nice. Then you've got this main board, which is double-sided, and I'm not sure if the sides are different or what's going on, but they essentially look the same, so I'm not going to show you the other side. So I backed the deluxe version, and it also came with some expansions. So I have all the deluxe pieces. So these are like, I don't know if these are acrylic. They feel like wood. I don't know. They feel plasticky, actually. These pieces feel plasticky, so I don't know what material that is. I think it's plastic. But then I have a whole bunch of different acrylic pieces for all the different like ingredient types. So those are really nice. So yeah, so there's a bunch of those. Oh, each person has like a counter. So each person has one of these, and it looks like it keeps track of your reputation. And then there's a whole bunch of different cards. The card quality is really nice. Like these are like linen finish cards, I believe. Just super nice, just really, really nice cards. Oh, and there's like back sides. So it looks like you can have, like, I don't know what that means, but different sides to the characters, which is cool as well. But yeah, just very cutesy artwork. And the cards smell so good. Yes, okay, so yeah, so these are some of the big character cards. And then there's a whole bunch of smaller cards. There's like these different like recipes, I think, that you're going to be trying to fulfill. So again, there's a lot of those, a lot of them actually. So there's like all of these cards. And then there's like these smaller cards. Like there's a lot of cards in this game. So there's like objective cards. There's these spell cards. So definitely not sleeving this because there's too many cards. And who knows if I'll even actually enjoy it. I mean, I hope I will. I actually saw someone's post, and this I think is one of the expansions, if I remember correctly. Corruption, maybe not. But I saw someone's post who played solo, and they said that they really enjoyed it, which is, you know, good to see. And then actually some of the other expansions I just stuck in a bag to keep the cards separate. But there was a couple micro expansions, so I just stuck all of them in one bag because I figured the first time I play, I probably will not play with expansions. So yeah, so this arrived. So really looking forward to playing this. Like it just looks adorable, and I absolutely love the artwork and everything and the theme of this game. So really looking forward to playing this. So I backed this on Kickstarter. It is not a review copy. Some other games I backed which arrived. Let me just grab them. So this one, Wicked Christmas, is a game that I had backed on Kickstarter. And I think you guys might have remembered me going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to back it or not. In the end, I did. Just because I feel like that this is a Christmas game that my family would probably understand how to play. So I could probably actually play it with them. So it comes with an expansion, the Scrooge expansion pack. So I think that these are all expansion cards that I'm showing you right now. But I really like the art style as well, like nice art. Oh, actually there's another expansion, White Elephant. So these are the White Elephant expansion cards, but cool art style, really like it. And then these are just some of the regular cards. So I think the expansions just allow you to play with more players. I think that that's what that's for. But let me just show you. So yeah, so it'll just be nice to have a Christmas game that I think can be played quickly. Like I think it's just a quick card game. So yeah, so we'll see. So this arrived, so that's nice. So it's called Wicked Christmas, the card game of festive chaos and strategy. Turn holiday madness into a battle of wits. So yeah, so with my expansion, I think it can go up to 6 players or 7, I don't know. Another game I had backed on Kickstarter arrived, and that is called Trust Me. So Trust Me arrived. I could not resist because I think it's like Alice in Wonderland themed, kind of, or for some reason it reminded me of Alice in Wonderland. I actually don't know if it's Alice in Wonderland themed. But anyway, it comes with a bunch of these like cardboard tokens of some kind. And then a bunch of cards, which I actually haven't opened, so we can open them together. Maybe I shouldn't have ripped that, but oh well. But really cool artwork. Like, check out that artwork. Now, this is published by that one publisher who did Darwin's Journey. And They've published other smaller games that are similar to this one, like hats, for example. In fact, it came with some extra cards for hats, which I do own as well. So I think I backed some like special expansion or something. So there's some cards in here which have like foiling on them, which are really pretty. So let me just show those to you. Ooh, yeah, look at these. So there's one of each type that has foiling on it, which is really nice. So that's that. And then it looks like there's a metal coin of some kind. So I'll show that to you guys as well. I don't know if the metal coin is actually used in the game or if it's just like some collectible coin. I don't know. But that's a really nice coin. I'll just stick it in the box because I don't know if it's used. And then I don't know if these are bookmarks, so I don't even know if these are actually used, but yeah. They just look like bookmarks. I don't know. I'm just gonna stick them in the box as well, just in case they're actually used for gameplay, because I really don't know. So yeah, so that arrived, and then it came with, I had backed this, and actually I don't have it right now. I'll show you next time, because I don't want to get up now, but I had backed this one other game from Lemery Games. It's their like small collection of games from Africa, so that arrived. And I think if you had backed like both of them at the same time, you could get like a free game or something like that. So I got this free like little mini game called Get Salty. Honestly, it doesn't look like anything I would actually want to play. I'm just gonna open it up and see what's inside and probably just donate it to a game library or something. Yeah, it's just got a bunch of different cardboard pieces of different salty snacks. Yeah, I don't even know if there's actually a rule book. Okay, there is a small little piece of paper in there that it has the rules as well. So yeah, so just some tokens with of different salty snacks, and have no idea what that's about, but it does not seem like something I would actually play. So so I'm gonna put that aside. So yeah, so those are some new arrivals. Again, I'm forgetting a couple, so I'll show those in the next video I shoot. So let's move on to stuff that I am backing. And I think I forgot to mention some stuff that I'm backing. So I'll mention that now, the last time I did my video, if it'll actually load. So yeah, so one thing I forgot to mention last time is Artistry. So I'm backing this game called Artistry from this publisher, and I've never actually played any of their games, called Dux Somnium Games, or is it Do Somnium Games? I guess maybe that's how it's pronounced, Artistry, and I'm backing the deluxe version of this game. So this has to do with Art Deco art, and I'm a huge fan of Art Deco. Like, I love that time period, and I love art from the Art Deco period. So it says, you know, it's bringing Art Nouveau. So it's bringing the works of renowned artist, I don't know why I said it like that way, Alphonse Mucha, and other Art Nouveau masters. So yeah, so it just includes really stunning Art Nouveau art. So yeah, just really, really cool. So yeah, so this is the same publisher as Botany and La Fleur, two games that I've never played. So yeah, so I hope that this is good. And this game has like some really expensive versions as well. Like you can get like this jewelry box version, which of course I'm not going to go to do because it's insanely expensive, but the standard edition is $39. At retail it says it'll be about $50. The deluxe edition is $75, and then it says at retail it'll be like $100. So if you are considering it, I guess getting it this way is probably better, although with shipping involved maybe it'll come up to $100 anyway, who knows. The jewelry box edition, which I guess maybe some people are backing, is $199, and retail edition when it goes to retail will be $300. So yeah, so yeah, it includes some stunning pieces. Oh, and then there's another edition, like another pledge level, jewelry box plus little artistry, which is $225. And then there's like add-ons. So there's an add-on of a small game called Little Artistry for $29, which I'm not gonna do. Yeah, but the artwork just looks really stunning. The expansion I already added on. So there's an expansion called Delightful Doorways with really pretty doors. So definitely wanted that because the doors are just so pretty. Like this is just such a freaking pretty game. So yeah, so, and then you can add on Botany, it looks like, or no. standalone game for botany. So it's not actual botany, because I was like $18. That seemed pretty cheap for a board game. No, it's I guess it's a small standalone card game or something like that. Anyway, so I'm backing this, and I forgot to mention that, but that has 10 days left. Still backing Cat Pack's Meow Resort, which I talked about last time. And I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm backing Point Galaxy and Propolis, because those are two games that I think I would be very interested in. So those are the games I'm currently backing. I'm also backing Formaggio just at the Pledge Manager level. I'm actually hoping that I'll get to receive a review copy of it, since I covered the base game. Don't know. Oh, and then I'm backing Ludos, the Ancient Games Collection for America, just because I already own the Asian and African collections. So America is their next collection. And I believe it even has like a game from Peru in it or something like that. I actually have yet to play any of these. So again, this would be really helpful. This would be one of those things that I would probably play if I had a partner and I didn't live alone, because, most of them are two-player games, and it's very hard for me to play two-player games, because if I'm going to a game night or having a game night at my house, it's usually more than 2 players. So don't really get the opportunity to play two-player games as much as I would like. But yeah, so we'll see. So those are all the games I'm currently backing that have live campaigns. So let's move on. So it's been a while since I've done a cat update, so I guess I would talk about that. The weather's been flip-flopping. It's been going from like winter to spring to winter again to spring again and so on. But no more major snow, it seems like knock on wood, I'm knocking on my table here. So I think the heavy snow part is all done, thank God, but we still do have some days where it gets pretty cold, not as cold as it did during like the worst parts of winter. But I'm happy to report that all my cats at the colonies have survived the brutal winter, which is really good. So when Yoon Banker was here, so if you watched the last 2 videos, you would have seen that he was in town, and he helped explain some games on my channel. So he very kindly went to the colonies with me and helped me to do some work on them that I've been wanting to do for a while. So colony number 1, which is the one that I always say is very swampy, which is like kind of like a little valley that gets really flooded in the winter time, especially when it rains a lot or the snow starts melting. Like I noticed the water levels rising. So he very kindly helped me to put down some more pallets, and we raised the shelters a bit. So that was really nice. So it was nice to have a helping hand to do that. So helped make that colony a bit nicer that way. And then at the other colony, like between the pallet where I feed them their wet food and their dry food feeding station, this like one strip of land would get super duper muddy. Like my boots would constantly like get stuck in the mud, like glops and glops of mud. So he helped me. We went to a hardware store, like a home goods store, whatever, and bought some like stones and then some sand, and like created like kind of a gravel pathway over all the mud, and it's been amazing. Like now when it rains, and it rained really heavily one day, it did not get muddy. Like that's just amazing. Like, so it was really nice to have him help me with the stuff that I needed to do, because again, living alone, and it's really hard for me because I do everything by myself. So it was really nice of him to offer to help me to do this work on these colonies that I really, really wanted to do for so long. So happy that I now no longer have to deal with all of that mud at colony number 2, and the cats have more of a flat area in colony number 1 to walk on and rest on and avoid the swampy water. So that's really, really good. And I think I might try to even do that whole gravel thing that we did at colony number 1 around where their feeding stations are. Again, it's a very small strip of land. I mean, I've talked about how these colonies look and what they're like. I mean, I can just kind of show you in a picture right now, but I'm going to try to cover up some muddy areas in colony number 1 as well. I guess another update is that one of the cats at colony number 2 is limping. Here's a picture of that cat just sticking her head out of one of the shelters I had built. So it's really nice to see when the cats use the shelters. Like that just makes me really happy. So here's a picture of her just kind of like peeking out of the shelter, but she has a pretty bad limp. So just keeping an eye on the limp, seeing if it gets better or worse. And if it doesn't improve, then I'm gonna try and trap her to get her you know, healed, to get her some treatment for her limp. So yeah, so those are the colony updates. So a huge thank you to Yoon for when he was here and we were working on our game together, to help me out with the work that I really wanted to do at these colonies. Like, very much appreciated. So that is an update on the cat colonies. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there might not be a video again until either April 7th or April 14th, because I am going to southern Spain with my mom and little sister for a vacation. So we are returning on April 5th, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan. So if I have energy, I'll shoot a video on the 6th, but if not, then I won't be shooting a video again until the 13th probably. So you might not see another video from me until April 14th, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing a part of Spain that has a lot of Muslim and Arab influence. I have never seen that before, so really excited about that. So yeah, so you won't see a video from me again for a while. So I think that those are all the updates. So let's move on. So I finally did my book club readings for today, or for a few weeks ago, since I'm a few weeks behind now. So for today, we were supposed to read chapters 17 and 18. Excuse me. So, you know, they're on a boat and they're just going somewhere. I'm actually not sure where they're going, but they're on a boat and escaping. And, you know, I guess, you know, I think it's only Sandra who watches this because I think we're the only two reading this. So I was sad when the horse died. Obviously, that's one part that stuck out to me. And I remember actually, so really sad for the poor horsey. I hope he knew how to swim. But yeah. I really don't know what else to say about these two chapters, because, you know, again, it just was a lot of stuff just taking place on a boat. I'm just kind of surprised when Fatima and Gwenek, you know, hooked up. Like, that was kind of surprising to me. That was very unexpected, I thought. Not something I was expecting at all. So yeah, so I really don't know what else to say about this. I mean, we learn a little bit more about Luz from Gwenek. Like, Gwenek even talks about how Luz knew all these different things. So still curious about how Luz knows stuff and like where she's getting this power from. One thing that I kind of missed before is the speck in Luz's eye, which Fatima mentions in one of these chapters, which I don't know if that was mentioned earlier on in the book, but I kind of missed it. Some kind of like demonic or like speck that Fatima noticed in Luz's eye. So I'm curious what that's about. So yeah, so I guess that's about it really. And then we see, you know, Fatima, I guess in the end, if I started getting a little bit sleepy towards the end of chapter 18, but I think Fatima was kind of risking her life at the end to try to save them and save the other two, if I remember correctly, right? Anyway, so yeah, so we're still at a point where I'm still kind of like, okay, what's gonna happen? And there's only a little bit left. Like, I guess, are they like on a journey to try to like actually find the Bird King? Like, I don't even know at this point what the end goal was. Like, were they just trying to escape to anywhere away from the Inquisition, or were they trying to actually reach a particular destination in mind? Because at this point, I don't remember. So I really don't remember where they're headed or if they're just trying to escape in general. But for next week, let's read chapters 19 and 20, or next time rather, because I won't be here next week. But for next time, let's read the next two chapters, which are chapters 19 and 20, and let me know what you think is going to happen. Maybe you've even finished the book by now and I'm super duper behind. If you have finished it, just let me know what you think of it. And yeah, I don't know, just leave me your thoughts below, because I'm still kind of, I guess, confused as to what's really the end goal here. I guess just escaping, or if they're actually trying to find the Bird King. I mean, the book is called The Bird King, so maybe they actually are trying to find the Bird King and I just kind of forgot about that. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, but I'm still enjoying the writing style. I think she's a very good writer, that's for sure. So yeah, so that was Fiction Book Club. So let's move on. So for nonfiction book club for this week, we were supposed to read chapter 6 of Palestine, A 4,000-Year History by Nur Masalha. And chapter 6 is the Arab province of Jund, Philistine, 638 to 1099 AD. Continuities, adaptation, and transformation of Palestine under Islam. So in this chapter, I mean, again, I highlighted quite a bit like I always do, but you basically see the transformation of Palestine under Islam. I think the biggest takeaway from this chapter is that what you hear Zionists say about Palestine today is not true. Again, what we see in this chapter is even during Islam, Palestinians thrived. There were major trade ports. There was a lot of trading going on. There was a lot of education still happening. A lot of things improved. So you see a lot of, you see Palestine being like this, this area where people were living and thriving, and it wasn't a barren wasteland. It wasn't, when Muslims were there, it wasn't some barbaric area where bad things were just happening. It was an area with learning going on and trading happening and lots of stuff like that, good things happening. So I think it just basically, like the rest of the book does, it just shows all the lies that Zionists tell today about how Palestine was a land without people. No, it was not a land without people. We've seen continuously throughout this entire book that since ancient times, Palestine has been a land with a people, and they've been thriving. They were thriving before the Zionists came, rather. So it says the earliest Arabic inscriptions found in Palestine go back to the Roman and Byzantine periods. So that's very, cool. So we see that in this time period when Muslims come into Palestine, that they basically turn the three different kinds of parts of Palestine into, they take two of those parts and turn it into one part, which is called Jund Philistine. And it says, so it says, and the Arabs took over Palestine in the 7th century. Many place names in Palestine that were used by the Greek-speaking Byzantine administration continue to be used by the Arab administration, hence the emergence of the three Arabic forms of Byzantine: Philistine, Philistine, and Philistine. Okay, I'm pretty sure by my pronunciations they all sounded the same, but in written form they kind of look different. And it even talks about presence of Arabs in Palestine was noted by Herodotus in the 5th century BC, yada yada. Okay, let's see. It says Palestinian Aramaic was also spoken by Palestinian Jews during the Roman and Byzantine periods. And it says in the early 20th century, the European Zionist inventors of modern Hebrew, in pursuit of indigenizing and antiquating strategies, borrowed heavily from Palestinian Aramaic and ancient Greek vocabulary. So then it shows you how they changed the names in order to try to show that they're the indigenous people of Palestine, which we know that they are not. All these European Jews are not indigenous to Palestine. These Muslim Palestinians and these Christian Palestinians who have roots going back to these ancient times, they are the indigenous people of Palestine. So you see throughout this book how the Zionists would come in and destroy various towns. In this chapter, you would see that, and they would change names and try to make it seem like that they were the ones who were always there, which is not true. Let's see. It says Arabization processes in Greater Palestine long preceded Islamization processes in the country. Excuse me, my throat is really not good right now. Although the establishment of Arabic as the lingua franca of Palestine went hand in hand with the Islamization of the country. Then it says the trading cities of Old Philistia created a flourishing integrated south in Palestine by working closely with Arab traders and sailors. And again, you see Herodotus describing this in detail, describing the detail in detail the presence of Arabs in southern Palestine. And then the author talks about how it says the Nabatean Arabs who flourished on international trade and local agriculture began to dominate the Negev from the 4th century BC onwards and founded several Palestinian villages and towns, some of which survived until the Palestinian Nakba of 1948. So again, Zionists came and destroyed a lot of these towns and villages and no longer existed, even though they had existed for God knows so many years. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and over 1,000 years. Like, very sad. Again, it talks about different names and how the Zionists tried changing those names. You know, in one of those places it says, more recently, UNESCO declared the archaeological site a World Heritage Site, ironically due to its historic importance, but in fact without acknowledging the centrality of the site to the 24 centuries of Arab history and heritage in Palestine. So it's talking about this place called Elusa. Yeah. Which Israelis named Haluza, and then UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site, but without acknowledging, again, 24 centuries of Arab history. So yeah. It talks a lot about the Umayyad Caliphate and how it brought Islam to Palestine, and then the, the construction of various architectural sites and the importance of Jerusalem and pilgrimages and stuff like that. So you learn a lot about that during this chapter. So it says, under Islam, literary Arabic and Arabization became a vehicle for globalization. Literary Arabic and translation into Arabic became closely associated with scientific inquiry and cultural innovation, expanding international trade and cosmopolitanism. I cannot talk today. So yeah, Arabic and Arabization encouraged egalitarianism in Palestine and became key markers of identity for both urban elites and increasingly Arabized Palestinian peasantry. So again, I highlighted so much, but obviously I'm not going to read all of it. It says, the Muslim Arabs ushered in a period of prosperity and religious toleration and religious and cultural autonomy for Christian and Jewish religious communities in Arabic millah in Palestine, and permitted the previous administrative organization to continue. I've talked about this before. So in Arabic, it's called millah. In the Ottoman Empire, it was called millet. So the millet system is a system that allowed allowed Jews and Christians to have their own courts, to do a lot of their own administration according to their own customs and religion. But what you will find to be very interesting is during these time periods, a lot of Jewish and Christian women opted to use the Islamic courts instead, which they had the right to do since those courts existed and they were the rulers at the time, because the Islamic courts gave these women more rights than the Jewish and Christian courts were giving to them. Because in Islam, women are afforded the right to decide who they want to marry, they're afforded the right of divorce, they're afforded the right of inheritance, and so on. So again, a lot of rights were given to women by the Islamic courts, which the Jewish and Christian courts did not give to women at that time. And if you study Ottoman history, which I did for a number of years, you will also learn that. Yeah. So yeah, it talks about another area, city, Ayla, which was a vibrant Palestinian port town under both Byzantines and Muslims, and at the center of the Indian and South Arabian spice trade. It developed into a major trading port town and benefited hugely from the annual caravans of Muslim pilgrims to and from Mecca, and from the linking of the Al-Sham region with the Arabian Peninsula and Indian Ocean. Yeah. It says, Ayla, Philistine under Islam gives us some indication of the vastness and wealth of the province of Jund, Philistine, which stretched from the fertile plain of Marj ibn Amr in the north, a rich granary in Palestine, in a region which at the time was considered part of Lower Galilee, to Al-Arish in Sinai, and to the trading town of Ayla, Philistine on the Red Sea. And then it talks about another city, Tiberias, which was the regional capital of Galilee at the time of Jesus, and so on. And it says it was a seat of religious learning for Arab Judaism and ancient Hebrew. So yeah. Just a lot of interesting history here, of course. It talks about how the Umayyads respected the multi-faith and shared heritage of the country and continued many of the Byzantines' administrative traditions and architectural styles. You know, they undertook the monumental building programs in Jerusalem, and, you know, the center of which were the Dome of the Rock, which is an important building, of course, for Muslims, and Al-Aqsa Mosque. Yeah, let's see what else. You know, it talks a bit about the Crusades and all of that, and it says after the Muslim recovery of Jerusalem from the Latin Crusaders in 1187 and the elimination of the Ayyubids of the First Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, the administrative capital of Philistine shifted to Al-Quds. And it says earlier under Islam and for several centuries between the early 8th and late 11th centuries, Al-Ramla was the economic and political hub of the province of Philistine and the largest, richest, and most powerful trading city in the country. And it gave a little bit of history about the name Ramla and how it was actually named after an important woman in Islamic history, apparently, which I didn't know. So interesting. And then, you know, it says, we see Islam continuing and pragmatically adapting Palestine traditions and the Byzantine administrative and geopolitical traditions of Palestine rather than replacing them completely. It says the tendency in Palestine and the Near East as a whole to equate countries, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what is it? This adaptation and transformation of Byzantine administrative and geopolitical traditions was also influenced by the tendency in Palestine and the Near East as a whole to equate countries, provinces, or regions with capital cities. And then it gives a few examples. So it says the capital cities of Gaza and Ascalon and their hinterlands became synonymous with Philistia in the late Bronze Age and throughout the Iron Age. And then it gives some more examples. So that's one example. It says, for over 3 centuries, the province of Jund Philistine under Islam was a larger and even more prosperous country than the combination of Palestina Prima and Palestina Salutaris. Under the Byzantines, in contradistinction to various ideological histories presenting this period as one of decline. So again, a little bit what we talked about, like how Zionists always want to present Palestine as being under decline when under Islamic rule, because they always want to present Muslims as barbarians who have no culture, no history, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. But if you look at history, you will see that Muslims made a lot of contribution, not only to science like mathematics and medicine and astronomy, but to art and architecture and literature and so on, language. So, you know, Muslims were not, you know, when the Dark Ages was happening in Europe, look at what was happening in the Middle East, and look at what was happening in the Arab and Persian worlds, where they were actually advancing and making advancements. So, you know, but Zionists always want to kind of paint a different kind of story in order to, you know, support their propaganda that they are enlightened, that they have the only democracy in the Middle East, which is complete bullshit, and blah, 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 and that no one lived in Palestine before them. It talks a lot about coinage and how, you know, that shows, you know, what kinds of economic centers these places were. And it talks a lot about the different types of coins that were created. So, you know, through numismatic history, you can learn a lot about history of different regions. So that's really interesting. It talks about the taxes that were imposed and how much taxes they collected in the various areas. So it says the tax revenues raised in the whole of Palestine, the 2 provinces of Philistine and Al-Urdun in 864, 850,000 dinars amounted to more than half of taxes raised in the whole of Abbasid Mesopotamia in 818/819. Yeah. It says the economy of Palestine was boosted by the country's strategic location and its international trade, including its long-distance trade with India, China, and Europe. It talks about glassware and how glassware was Arab Jews of Palestine played an important part in the culture, commerce, and manufacturing industries of the country. And one of the things that they produced was glassware, which is very interesting. It talks about silk and the word gauze, which originates from Gaza. So the city Gaza, which has been completely decimated by Israel in the genocide, like there's literally like nothing left in Gaza. So the modern word gauze, which is what you use for like, you know, treating things, you know, wounds, like placing over wounds and stuff, that word comes from the city name of Gaza. So that's one thing you can learn from reading this book. Yeah. What else? Some more about the numismatic history and so on. Oh, and then it talks about the Fatimid rule of Palestine, which is when you did kind of see some, let's see, what does it say? Yeah, so it says the Fatimid rule of Palestine was marred by great turmoil and upheavals. It says that Ramla was still the official capital of the province of Jinn, Philistine, but the city suffered badly from its occupation and pillaging by the Bedouins of Banu Tay in Palestine in late 1024. And then there were some earthquakes which were also devastating. It says a combination of political and military strategic calculations were also factors in the reconfiguration of the perception and boundaries of historic Palestine before, during, and after the Fatimid rule. And then it gives various considerations for that. It talks about how there was this one person who set fire to the capital of Palestine. Wow. And it says the Bedouin conquest of Ramla was a bleak chapter in the history of the town. It says, although resentment of the Shiite Fatimid rule in Palestine was not universal or even evident among the Sunni ulama of Jerusalem, this resentment was very strong among the Bedouins of Banu Tay and the Christian communities, the former for economic reasons and the latter for religious ones. So the Fatimid period clearly was not a good time for Palestine. It talks about tribal rebellions, widespread insecurity and famine, which in addition to the severe earthquake of 1025 devastated Palestine. Let's see. It talked about this one collection of Arab Jewish fragments of manuscripts. And it says that this massive collection, which began during the Abbasid period in 870 AD, became the largest and most diverse collection of medieval manuscripts in the world and a testimony to the flourishing culture of Arab Jews under Islam. So very interesting, because, people who want to say that Arab Jews don't exist, or, how this period was really bad for Christians and Jews. Like there's, a lot of history that points to all of those lies not being true. So that's just kind of like a quick, well, not super quick, but kind of an overview of what that chapter was about. So again, we just see, this book again and again, time and time again, show us all the lies that Zionists say about Palestine and how Palestine didn't exist and blah, 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 when you can clearly see that Palestine has existed for centuries, like centuries and centuries it's existed. So for next time, let's read chapter 7, which is Between Egypt and Al-Sham, Palestine during the Ayyubid, Mamluk, and early Ottoman periods. Let me just see how long this chapter is. I mean, it's not a super long chapter, but like I said, anytime I try to assign more than one chapter, I fail to read more than one chapter. So let's just stick to one chapter at a time, even though it might make book club go a little bit slower. But for next time, please read chapter 7. And let me know what you thought was the most interesting part of chapter 6 in the comments below. Did you learn anything new? I hope so, because I'm always learning something new from reading this. Like a lot, I'm learning so many new things from reading this book about ancient Palestine and, how it's always been Palestine. And just sorry, my throat is really bad, but I'm just learning a lot, so I hope you are too, and I hope you're enjoying reading this. Just leave me your thoughts in the comments below, and again, for next time, read chapter 7. So let's move on. So it's been a while since I've talked about what's been happening in the world, so I'm going to try to be brief, which I know I always fail at. So if you follow Palestinians on the ground and who are posting on Instagram, you will see that Israel broke its ceasefire numerous times and then has full on reinstated the genocide. So in a matter of 48 hours, we saw several hundred people killed, including countless children. They are not even trying to hide the fact that they are deliberately targeting civilians and killing children. Like, they are actually aiming for children, which is what they always do anyway, but this time they're even more proud about it. So again, follow Palestinians on Instagram and TikTok so that you can learn about all of this and see the truth, because mass media is not going to report the truth. And we still see complete silence in the board game industry about the genocide. But I want to talk about a post from a while back that Eric Lang made that really infuriated me. And this is from quite a while ago, but so it's from earlier in March, and this is from March 8th. So Eric Lang wrote, "Hard truth for USA friends. Your strategy for the next 4 years must not include waiting for the Democratic Party. They will not save you. It's not that they cannot save you, they will not save you. Their leadership strategy is to let America burn for 4 years and expect you to run back to the voting booth for more centrist neoliberal policy, failing to safeguard against the next fascist wrecking ball when they lose in 4 or 8 years, assuming there are elections again. Democrats will not save you. The USA is not special or unique. The Democratic and Republican monopoly is not written in stone. Radical times allow for radical political shifts. The Republic does not need to die with decorum. Democrats will not save you. You have to save yourselves." This infuriates me because what was I saying during election season, and what was Eric Lang saying during election season? He was encouraging you to vote for the lesser of two evils, Kamala Harris, the genocidal bitch. Whereas I was telling you that Democrats do not give a fucking shit about you. That was evident when Biden was president. It was evident when Kamala was running, and it's evident even now. Like, we were saying this all along, but back then Eric Lang was making disparaging remarks about leftists like myself and basically saying that, we're crazy, we should be ignored, vote for the Democratic Party, like, you need to do your civic duty and vote for the lesser of two evils, and then we'll work on change when Kamala is in power, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of that complete bullshit that he was saying during election season, which people like me knew was utter bullshit. Like, we knew that if Kamala won, we would see complacency for the next 4 years, just like we did when Biden was president. When Biden was president, what the fuck did we see from Eric or other people? Did we see them like pushing hard and actually going out and being activists and fighting for things? No. But people like me were back then. Like, for example, we were protesting the genocide back then, and we're still out in the streets protesting the genocide now. People like me, leftists, were telling you that the Democratic Party does not give a shit about you. Like, they were already pandering to the neocons and neoliberals and were, trying really hard to get the Republican vote. They were not listening to the leftists. They were not giving a shit about the Democrats and what they wanted, which is why they lost, which is why countless people did not even go out to vote, and Kamala, the genocidal bitch, lost. And now we have Trump, the genocidal, what's the equivalent male word for bitch? I don't know, asshole. So now we have Trump, the genocidal asshole, and Elon Musk, the president of the United States. Like, that's what we have now. And we have that when we could have had something different if people would actually get out in large numbers and demand something different, which is what we should have done before elections, before the election. We should have, more people should have been, advocating third parties, and advocating for breaking this duopoly that we have in this country. I recently saw a post talking about how in history, like, what percentage of people you actually need to get to actually protest and rebel in order to see actual change. And I think it was like 3-point-something% of the population. So if like 3-point-something% of the United States population actually demanded change and got out into the streets and protested, maybe we would actually see real change. But people would rather just sit at home and complain and be complacent when the Democratic Party is in power and more of your rights are eroded. Like, let's be real, the Democratic and Republican parties only care about billionaires. Like, no one gives a shit about the regular person. No one gives a shit about the regular person in America. And I'm just really angry that here is someone who was basically shitting on leftists like me during election season and encouraging people to vote for the lesser of two evils, do your civic duty and vote for the lesser of two evils, and who is now acknowledging that the Democratic Party does not give a shit about you. Like, people like me have been saying this all along. People like me have been saying that this country is broken, that there is no democracy in this country, that the duopoly is broken. But people like Eric Lang were saying like, oh, like that's fear mongering and blah, blah, blah. Vote for the lesser of two evils. It's still better for you. Whatever. The Democratic Party never gave a shit about you, and more so than ever, it should be evident that it does not give a shit about you. So that I just found really infuriating. The same person who was encouraging people to vote for Kamala is now saying that the Democratic Party doesn't care about you, when people like me knew that all along. And had Kamala won, like, let's be real, we know that he would have been complacent. We know that he wouldn't have been making posts about how shitty the Democratic Party is, even though they are. Like, we would have just seen complacency for 4 years, just like we did when Biden was president. Like, I haven't seen Eric, like, once condemn the genocide. Yet today he posted a Malcolm X quote saying, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. This is something that pro-Palestinians often quote, because that's exactly what's happening to pro-Palestinian protesters, anti-genocide protesters. Like, we've even seen a green card holder illegally arrested and detained in this country, and we've seen massive protests around the country and around the world asking for him to be released. This country is becoming more and more dangerous, and it's especially becoming more and more dangerous for those who are speaking out against the genocide. And why is it becoming more and more dangerous for people speaking against the genocide? Because this country is effectively controlled by Israel. It's the United States of Israel. And if you can't see that, then you are blind. You are blind if you don't understand that this is the United States of Israel. It is not the United States of America. So yeah, and despite it being the United States of Israel and seeing everything that Israel is doing and how all of our tax dollars are still going to Israel and everything, and we saw the shit show of Trump and Vance and Zelensky and what happened there, complete shit show. And we see that America is no longer going to be a big player, a Western power because of what happened. We've seen all of this, and yet people are still ignoring the fact that Israel controls America, and they're still ignoring the fact that there's a genocide going on. So, like, for how long are you going to ignore this? For the people in the board game industry, for how long are you going to ignore the genocide and just talk about everything else that Trump does, but ignore that when so many of our tax dollars are funding this genocide? For how long will you ignore it? For how long will you pander to your Zionist buddies? Zionists are the fucking Nazis of today. And if you don't see that, then read some fucking books. Like, it's all there for you to read and learn. There is no fucking excuse today to ignore what Zionism is, to ignore what evil it is. You have so much at your fingertips. You have a wealth of knowledge that you could, dive into. You could get all of that information, but you choose to remain ignorant so you can support your Zionist publishers and friends and content creators. It's sick. It is like seriously, seriously sick. Like, I still see people proudly, promoting games from Burnt Island Games and Kids Table Board Gaming. I see people just having no issues with supporting content creators like Quackalope and Board Game Co. and other Zionist, content creators. Just everyone acting like it's completely okay to be a Zionist today. It's not fucking okay. If it's okay to be a Zionist today, then all these Zionists come out and proudly proclaim yourselves as being Zionist. Come out and say that you are a Zionist if it's perfectly fine to be a Zionist today. Like, if being a Zionist is perfectly fine, then just say what you are, instead of actually like not uttering the words, but supporting all the things that Zionists support, which is genocide, apartheid, and all the other evil that is happening. You know, supporting Zionists today is no different than if it were World War II and Jews were in concentration camps and people were, you know, still supporting games published by Nazis and being like, oh yeah, but I'm actually against, you know, the genocide of Jews, but you know, we can still support games made by Nazis. No, you fucking can't. If you claim to be anti-genocide, then you should not be supporting anything from Zionists. Boycotts fucking work. There is proof that boycotts fucking work. Like, look at what's happened to Starbucks and McDonald's and all these other companies that have been boycotted. They work. So it's up to you, the people, to make a fucking difference. But in the board game industry, apparently it's still okay to support Zionists. Like, people are openly still supporting Zionists, like Burnt Island Games and Kids Table Board Gaming and Zionist creators and designers. Like, they're still supporting them. It's messed up. It's fucking messed up. It's hypocritical. It's, you know, people are showing what matters more to them, and it's sick. And, you know, people like me, I got banned from Board Game Geek for being anti-Zionist. Like, my, you know, the things I was saying about Zionists in this industry, Board Game Geek said I was attacking people when all I've done is attacked Zionists. I haven't attacked anyone else, but okay, whatever. You know, I got banned for that. So, you know, there's not much I can do or say. But there's one other content creator from Instagram who I saw created a thread on Board Game Geek and tried to get some kind of conversation going. I could not participate and I didn't read the whole thread. So again, I don't know if Zionists were ever mentioned, but even Board Game Geek is still protecting Zionists, and you know, they're the fucking Nazis of today. Would they allow games from Nazis to be on Board Game Geek? Would they allow, you know, Nazis to post on Board Game Geek? Would they support Nazis? If not, if the answer to all of those questions is no, then they should be doing the same for Zionists. Like, there is no fucking excuse for supporting Zionists today. And again, if being a Zionist is perfectly fine, then proudly proclaim that you are Zionist. Like, if it's perfectly fine, then you should have no problems with proudly proclaiming you're Zionist. And educated people like myself know that there is a difference between Zionism and Judaism. And not all Zionists are Jews, and not all Jews are Zionists. There are countless anti-Zionist Jews. So being anti-Zionist does not mean that you are anti-Semitic. And if you are stupid enough to be scared to say anything against Zionism because you don't want to be labeled anti-Semitic, then you're a fucking coward. Like, it's not the same fucking thing. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are not the same. Being anti-Zionist is not being anti-Semitic. And there are countless anti-Zionist Jews who will say that, who will show you that they are not the same. I follow so many of those anti-Zionist Jews on Instagram and TikTok. So again, you know, one person's voice is not enough. I'm sick of being like one of two people in this industry who is vocal against Zionists. I'm really, really sick of it. Even other Muslims and people of Middle Eastern descent in this industry are just silent and not saying anything. There's like a content creator who's Muslim on Instagram who has a watermelon emoji in his name, but has never once condemned the genocide and is happy to cover games by Zionists. And, you know, it's like, no one cares. No one has any fucking integrity. I'm just sick of this bullshit, hypocritical, industry. Is just filled with hypocrites and filled with shills, Zionist shills and sellouts. And until a significant amount of people actually do something and say something, it's going to remain this way. And you're going to have people like, you know, still praise people like Eric Lang and Suzanne Sheldon and Rodney Smith as champions of diversity, equity, and inclusion, all people who have never once condemned the genocide, who still support Zionist publishers and designers and content creators. So until we get a lot of people to speak up, nothing is going to change. So if you are someone watching this and you care, like, use your voice and do something. Like, I cannot carry all of this burden by myself. Like, I cannot be the only one speaking out against Zionism in this industry, but apparently I am, and it's just tiring. I mean, I'm like one of 2 or 3 people who like, okay, you know, who talks about Zionism. Like, occasionally I'll see a post, a comment from this one Arab creator on Eric Lang's post calling out Zionism, and Eric Lang always ignores every comment of his talking about Zionism. Because Eric Lang doesn't want to admit that he's a fucking Zionist shill. But you know, we need a lot of people for there to be change. It cannot rest on just 1 or 2 people. Like, nothing is going to change in that case. So if you are anti-Zionist, then say something, encourage people to not, you know, support Zionists in this industry. And in your daily lives, like, there are just so many sources you can, you know, go to see which companies support Israel and support the genocide and actually, you know, funnel money into Israel. So you can not support those companies. You can help make a change. So that is my rant of the week. So let's move on. Today's question of the week is sponsored by Quorum. What other games do you know that have dual scoring systems in which you have to be mindful of various things happening in the game that are going to score differently at the end of the game? I think this is the first time I've seen anything like that. I think it's pretty unique, but maybe I've missed other games that have dual scoring systems. So please let me know if you know of any others. And bonus question, what is your favorite game relating to ancient Rome? So that's a bonus question. I'm not sure what mine is. I would need to think about it for quite some time, but there are so many games relating to ancient Rome. So that one, you know, I think would require a bit of thinking. So those are the questions of the week. And until next time, bye.